helpful to us too. I mean, even though I'm not legally bound, like some entities to wear a badge, I always do so people know when I'm in the room.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice for them to put a name with a face, so thank you. And can we even fix CACnet just once and for all?
We've been wondering the same things for years.
Oh, yeah, it's
It
not
always
good.
takes a few weeks for them to figure out.
Yeah, oh, that's right,
Bandwidth
people are
again.
gonna use this
There's a whole
again.
influx of users now than there was last week. So.
Exactly.
To figure it out in the middle of the session, maybe.
I don't have much you want to talk about. Should we just adjourn now?
Yeah. We're not here to make a statement, we're just here to
Is there any
see
questions?
what's up, just, get together, how you guys doing? How went this?
The dog. Well, let's talk about the LDS Church statement today about anti-discrimination and the idea of linking that with religious liberties and maybe getting something done this session. You talked a lot yesterday about big battles and heavy lifting, but you didn't bring that up. So where are you on the statement today? Is that something you think can be done this session?
We did actually touch, Lisa, a little bit on religious liberties and anti-discrimination bills, and what a difference a day makes. And this is kind of the point we made yesterday, is that some of the ebbs and flows of a session and what happens and what news breaks really does start to drive those debates and discussions. And so we're in real time. There was a major announcement by the LDS Church today that I myself know basically what it was about. I was unable to watch it live on our television. We were in a meeting, but I think it drives a lot of what we do in the session when you have an announcement like that, when you have kind of that direction. Religious liberties is an issue that we better take very seriously. The anti-discrimination component that was referred to today, I think it all boils down, whatever you want to call it, and how we treat each other, and how we treat each other with respect. Regarding your faith, regarding your sexual preference, I think there's a consistent tone there of treating people the way you want to be treated. And so I think that with that announcement today will come more debate and more discussion. But if you're looking for what the end game is or where that's all going here on day 2, I would not be able to tell you.
Yesterday, it seemed like there was, from both chambers, let's see how the Supreme Court weighs in on this and then kind of take it from there. Does the fact that the church came out and was so unequivocal in their endorsement of it change that at all?
It becomes a factor. It was one that wasn't there yesterday that is there now. So I think that you'll have that part of the debate now, the discussion. And so I think that, and these are good. This is why, we're a part-time branch of government, the legislative branch, but this is the time where we were taking on these big concepts and these big issues, and some of them come to us, and that's what's happened today. And I think you have the right members elected by their constituents to grapple those issues and see where they go.
Do you see this taking the shape of one bill or 2? What do you think would be?
At this point, I'm not sure. We have a number of bills by a number of sponsors, and that would be, the logistics of that would be the case, whatever you wanted to do in terms of how that would culminate into legislation, whether that is one bill or if it's just 2, and what house it starts in. I don't think any of those decisions have been made, or there aren't any agreements on that front.
Did this announcement by the LDS Church change the conversation in the legislature?
I'll tell you this, it adds to the conversation. It brings more depth and more, what's the word I'm looking for? Context. It brings additional context to the issues that we're talking about, and that's a good thing. No, you started, you gotta finish, come on.
I think there is one dynamic that's changed a little bit, at least for some policymakers, which is some people have seen this as an issue that needed to be dealt with on a city level. And the state is asking for something to be dealt with on a state level. And for me personally, that is something I need to reflect on. And I think other lawmakers will want to reflect on that as well.
Just to be more consistent across the board,
What that
as
means.
opposed to each municipality making their own.
Yeah, what that means. And so it's, that is, I think, one distinction that the church made today too, in some ways.
So, sorry, are you saying that they'll have to reconsider that thought that it should be done by the municipalities, or?
No, the church is, I think I can't speak for the church. I don't recall them dealing with any of these issues other than in Salt Lake City. But there are 20 or 30 other cities across the state that have also passed ordinances similar to Salt Lake. I can't tell you if the church had anything to do with any of those. But some lawmakers have said in the past that this is something that should only be dealt with at city levels. And what the church is saying today, based on what I've read briefly of their statement, I haven't read the whole piece, it's pretty lengthy, is that they would like to see something done on a statewide basis. You could verify that as you read the statement.
Yeah, no, they did. They said state and even bigger.
This is just the first time I've heard the LDS Church say they would like to see something done at a statewide level.
If there's nothing else on that, I'd like to get your thoughts on House Bill 11. It would bring back the firing squad. There was a rally on the steps of the Capitol today for those who were against it. What are your thoughts on that? It is going to be presented within the next week or two, and it passed interim committee 9-2 fairly easily.
You know, I'd have to ask those that rallied, are they opposed to the death penalty? Or are they opposed to this process? Because it pretty much is the same outcome. And I'm losing the argument when we talk about how, if the what is assumed. If capital punishment is fine and that's what we want to do, and now we're talking about the method that you'd use, I fail to see the point. I think you need to make sure that whatever you do, if that's your law, that you're doing it, efficiently, and that it's not torturous in any way. And whatever that would be, I don't know how you pick your favorite mode. It's an issue that back when it was addressed, I didn't vote for this bill of banning it, and I was one of the few that didn't back when it was addressed. I think it was Representative Cheryl Allen that ran the bill. I didn't vote for it then because I didn't get it. I still don't. And I think that the bigger issue is capital punishment, yay or nay. That's an issue that I actually understand. The process, once you got past that and you have capital punishment, does it just make us feel better? I mean, is that what we think, that we can just do it one way versus the other and that's more palatable to us? I mean, get to the root question, I say.
Representative King is presenting his bill to committee to put a cap on campaign contributions.
Yes.
It would limit to $10K for statewide offices and $5,000 for legislative offices. We're one of 4 states that currently don't have any limits. What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
You know, what's helping us or helping this issue be better informed is the massive House Investigative Committee that was overseen by our majority leader as the chair of that committee. I think that our state, unique in the campaign and elections process, was able to pull back some curtains that few policymakers or candidates have ever seen. And I think what was so startling about what the investigative committee uncovered was the dark money. Dark money is unregulated. It is not disclosed. It is not, you don't know how it is received and you don't know how it's spent. Dark money, as they laid out the case, I think are what paid for the numerous flyers that came that influenced the outcome of an election. And you saw the dark money here and all the dollars that flowed. And then you had the transparent process where every candidate discloses who they receive dollars from, how those dollars are spent. My fear about capping or taking the transparent process we have right now, where we see, and we've I think, strengthened our laws because we disclose now online in real time where those dollars come from. We have a small window. It used to be 2-3 times a year or something that we would show contributions received. With technology, we're doing that in even more frequency and in real time. That process, if you look at what happened and what was investigated, the problems weren't in the transparent part. It's the dark money. And I ran a bill a couple of years ago looking at greater transparency of those that can give without caps, without disclosure. And we look to include the names of those that would contribute to nonprofits, but Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance, the NRA, these are groups that are nonprofits. If you're going to seek to influence the outcome of an election, you ought to have minimally your name to it. And so I would rather spend political capital bringing greater transparency to anyone who wants to reach out to voters, influence the outcome of an election, and make that process brighter than taking the transparent part and trying to ratchet that down. That isn't where I think that the investigation found some of the most disturbing evidence. I think it was in the dark money side. So I'd like to see us spend money and spend our time bringing some sunshine to that element of campaigns.
Can't you have both though? Can't you have limits and more regulation?
Well, only if it's across the board. If you're going to say candidates, PACs, corporations, and unions are all capped, but then you're going to have a conduit for dollars into these campaigns through nonprofits. Remember, that's a loose term. And there is no cap, and there's not even disclosure. Well, we have a bill that has looked and sought to create greater disclosure, but there's ways around those, and they were highlighted as this bill went through the process. But you can't have a double standard. You can't have caps and restrict on one side if you have another component of campaigns and elections that simply don't have any restrictions and they don't have any transparency. So you need to have something that's uniform. If you can get there, I think then you're looking at some smart policy.
But that's the federal system right now, isn't it? Caps and
Unlimited
spending on other sides.
Has it slowed a dime of dollars into campaigns? I would argue that after the Nixon reelection, the CREEP committee, the committee to reelect the president, showed all these abuses of campaign funds, and all these caps were put in place. You now have, the Citizens United decision. You have super PACs. You have all these circuitous routes for dollars to find their ways into campaigns. It doesn't inform voters about where dollars are actually being contributed to and what candidates they support. I don't think it's slowed the dollars or the influence of contributions. And I think it's confused voters in terms of who's really contributing and trying to influence the outcome of elections. I far prefer a transparent, open process where you see everyone who's contributed and how those dollars are spent. And you know what? If you have some high dollar contributors, there's a reason. There's a story there. There's something that would motivate people to give to certain degrees, that adds context to a campaign cycle. Let that be part of it, but you can't do that if you have one side that you're going to regulate, you're going to have caps, you're going to do all that, and then you have that dark money side. In our state, that's not rumored. It used to be before this investigation that we could point to, I wonder if, proper role of government defense fund. I wonder, is that someone that's, is that a grassroots organization or not? That investigation's occurred. It wasn't a grassroots group. It was a group, and it was interests that wanted to put high dollar amounts into races to influence the outcome and do it in a way that nobody knew that they were there. And it's proof. We have it. Let's get into that. Let's start talking about that side of this process. That's the part I think is scariest.
One of Representative King's arguments, though, is if you have someone who's giving large amounts of money, by human nature, there's this desire to not necessarily be influenced by them, but to please them. So how do you balance that out when someone is contributing heavily to a campaign with your duty to do what's right for the people you represent?
If it's transparent and we can see those contributions in real time, if I'm the opponent of that candidate that's getting all those contributions, I'm making it a campaign issue. I'm going to the same voters that are weighing between two candidates and I'm saying, look at these contributions. Look at what they're receiving. If I think it's out of the norm, if I think it's, that is what a campaign ought to be. It ought to be about a battle about ideas. It ought to be what motivates people to make the decisions they do if you entrust them with that power. Let that be transparent, and if someone wants to receive those dollars, and if Representative King's worry that those that would contribute might have undue influence, let that person's opponent say as much. That's what I think would be a healthy. I think that's the way you address it.
Let's do one more question.
I'd like to make a comment on that. For me, it's actually more difficult than that. If it were that easy, great. We pass campaign finance reform, we put limits, and then we say, hooray, we solved the problem. We have not solved the problem. And I work in the investigative committee, we determined, actually determined that over $400,000 was contributed and spent in dark money that wasn't reported. So even if you'd had a cap on 5 or 10,000 above the table in the light of day, that didn't change anything, and it wouldn't have changed anything. $400,000 was used to run attack ads against Sean Williams, against former representative, now current Representative Brad Daw. And it was all done with just ignoring the current finance law. So to the degree that we make it more difficult or more onerous or less attractive to shed the light of day and to have reporting and have transparency, we run the risk of driving more of the dark money. That's a real issue.
Can I go back to the death penalty for a second? You kind of alluded to having a position on the death penalty. Do you have one, or are you just inviting the yay or nay conversation?
There's a lot of opinions about capital punishment. I just think that if you're going to have a debate, I think there's a more substantive debate that can be had about capital punishment as a whole than whether it makes you feel yucky on how you do it. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you guys.
This is